Ryan Sterling, a successful real estate developer, appears to have it all: wealth, power, and a seemingly perfect family. But cracks begin to show when his obsessive work habits and a dangerously close relationship with his seductive business partner, Claire, ignite suspicions of infidelity. As his wife, Emily, uncovers shocking betrayals and deceit, the story unravels into a tangled web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that threatens to destroy everything they've built. With secrets emerging from unexpected places, audiences are left furious and questioning how far betrayal can go before it completely shatters trust. It was the summer of 2017 in the small, bustling town of Willow Creek, a place where everyone seemed to know everyone, and gossip spread faster than wildfire on a dry day. The kind of town where reputations mattered, and secrets, well, they never stayed buried for long. At the heart of it all was Ryan Sterling, a 38-year-old real estate developer with a charisma that could sell sand in a desert. He was the kind of man who exuded confidence without trying. At 6'1", with a chiseled jawline and piercing blue eyes, he had an undeniable presence. Ryan wasn't just good-looking, he was driven. In the last decade, he'd taken Sterling Properties from a one-man operation to the top real estate firm in the county. His sharp instincts in business were unmatched, but his personal life, that was a different story. Ryan had been married to Emily for 12 years. She was the complete opposite of her husband: warm, approachable, and fiercely loyal. Emily taught at Willow Creek Elementary, where she was loved by her students and respected by their parents. Standing at 5'4", with soft brown hair that framed her kind face, Emily had a quiet beauty that Ryan once described as his home. While Ryan chased deals, Emily held their family together, raising their two kids, Ella, 10, and Jake, 7. Their lives seemed picture-perfect, or so it appeared. But as we all know, no marriage is without its cracks, and the Sterling's picture-perfect life had one glaring flaw: Ryan's obsession with work. He wasn't just a workaholic. He lived for the chase, the thrill of sealing the deal. And lately, Emily had started to feel more like a second thought than a priority. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the first domino fell. Ryan had just finalized a major deal, a multi-million-dollar contract to develop a luxury housing complex on the outskirts of town. To celebrate, his business partner, Claire Donovan, suggested drinks at their usual spot, the Willow Tap Room. Now, Claire wasn't just any business partner. At 34, she was sharp, ambitious, and strikingly beautiful, with auburn hair that fell in loose waves down her back and a wit as quick as her sales pitches. Claire had joined Sterling Properties 3 years earlier, and in that time, she'd become indispensable. The problem: Claire didn't just admire Ryan's work ethic, she admired him. Sitting across from him at the bar that evening, Claire swirled her wine glass and smiled. "You've done it again, Ryan. Another deal closed at this rate. Sterling Properties will own half the town by next year." Ryan chuckled, raising his glass. "And I couldn't have done it without you. You've been killing it lately." It was a simple exchange, the kind of thing colleagues might say to each other, but there was something in the way Claire's eyes lingered on his, something unspoken hanging in the air. Ryan didn't acknowledge it, at least not outwardly, but a part of him liked the attention. Lately, Emily had seemed so distant, caught up in PTA meetings and parent-teacher conferences. Claire, on the other hand, made him feel seen. Back at home, Emily was tucking Ella into bed when her phone buzzed. It was a text from her best friend, Mia. "Spotted. Ryan and Claire at Willow Tap Room again. Late meeting?" Emily stared at the screen, her stomach tightening. She hated how it made her feel: jealous, suspicious, insecure. But she quickly dismissed the thought Claire was Ryan's business partner, and late meetings were part of the job. Still, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. The next morning, Emily decided to address it. Over breakfast, while the kids argued about cereal, she casually asked, "How was your meeting with Claire last night?" Ryan didn't even look up from his coffee. "Good. We were just going over the final numbers for the Wellington project." "Why?" "Just curious," Emily said, forcing a smile. But Ryan's dismissive tone had already struck a nerve. She let it go for now. Over the next few weeks, Things began to shift. Ryan started coming home later, his excuses vague. Emily found herself questioning every little thing, his late-night texts, the way he'd suddenly started working out more, the cologne she didn't recognize. She told herself she was being paranoid. After all, Ryan wasn't the type to cheat, was he? It wasn't until a Saturday afternoon in July that Emily's suspicions deepened. She'd gone to the office to drop off lunch for Ryan, a small gesture to remind him that she still cared. But when she walked into his office, she found Claire sitting on the edge of his desk, laughing at something he'd said. They both froze when they saw Emily. "Oh, hi, Emily," Claire said, recovering quickly. "We were just finishing up some paperwork." Emily forced a polite smile. "Of course I'll let you get back to it." She placed the lunch bag on the desk and left, her heart racing. Claire's laugh echoed in her mind the entire drive home. That night, as Ryan sat in his study reviewing contracts, Emily couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ryan," she began, standing in the doorway, "can we talk?" He looked up, visibly annoyed. "What's up?" She hesitated, unsure of how to phrase it without sounding accusatory. "I feel like we've been distant lately. You're always working, and when you're not, it's like your mind is somewhere else." Ryan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Emily, I've got a lot on my plate right now. I'm doing this for us. For the kids." "I know," she said, her voice trembling, "but it feels like you're not even here anymore." There was a long pause before Ryan finally spoke. "I'm trying my best, Em. Can we not do this right now?" The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered. Emily wanted to believe him, to trust that he was just overwhelmed with work, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Meanwhile, Claire's presence in Ryan's life continued to grow. She started sending late-night texts that blurred the line between professional and personal. "Couldn't have done it without you today." "You're amazing." Ryan told himself it was harmless, just friendly banter between colleagues, but harmless intentions have a way of snowballing, don't they? It wasn't until a business trip to New York that things truly came to a head. Ryan and Claire had flown out to pitch a project to investors, and after a long day of meetings, they found themselves alone in the hotel bar. One drink turned into two, and two turned into a moment that couldn't be undone. The hotel bar was dimly lit, the kind of place where whispered conversations disappeared into dark corners. Ryan nursed his whiskey, his tie loosened, and jacket draped over the back of his chair across from him. Claire swirled her wine, her eyes locked on his. "You really are something, Ryan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "I mean, look at what you've built. Sterling Properties is practically running this town." Ryan smiled, but there was tension in his jaw. "Couldn't have done it without you." Claire leaned closer, her perfume filling the space between them. "Don't sell yourself short. You've sacrificed so much late nights, weekends, missing family dinners. Most men wouldn't do what you've done." Ryan's grip tightened around his glass. He wanted to believe her words, that his sacrifices meant something, but Emily's voice echoed in his head. "You're always somewhere else." "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it," he said finally. "What's the point of building something if it costs you everything else?" Claire's hand brushed against his, lingering for just a moment too long. "Maybe it's not about what you lose," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's about finding something new." Ryan didn't pull away, and in that moment, everything shifted. The next morning, Ryan woke up in Claire's hotel room. The sunlight streaming through the curtains felt harsh, accusatory. He sat up, his heart pounding, as the reality of what he'd done hit him like a freight train. Claire stirred beside him, smiling, as if nothing had changed. "Morning," she said, stretching. Ryan forced a smile, but his stomach churned. He couldn't undo it, and worse, he wasn't sure he wanted to. Back in Willow Creek, Emily sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. The kids were at a sleepover, and the house felt too quiet. She'd texted Ryan the night before, "Good luck with the meeting, miss you." But it was still unread. Mia's name popped up on her screen. "Call me now." Emily dialed immediately. "What's going on?" Mia's voice was hesitant. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but..." Someone saw Ryan with Claire at the hotel bar last night. They looked close. Emily's stomach dropped. Close. How close? They left together. Emily's hands trembled as she ended the call. She wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, but her gut told her otherwise. The signs had been there for weeks. The late nights, the excuses, the emotional distance. When Ryan returned home the next day, Emily was waiting. "How was the trip?" she asked, her voice steady but cold. "Fine long meetings, but productive." He kissed her cheek, but she didn't lean in. "Claire didn't come back with you?" Ryan froze, just for a second. "No, she stayed behind to wrap things up." Emily nodded, but her eyes didn't leave his face. "I see." Ryan felt the weight of her gaze, but he didn't crack. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, Emily became a detective in her own home. She checked phone records, credit card statements, even tracked Ryan's location through his phone, and the more she uncovered, the worse it got. Late-night charges at fancy restaurants, hotel bookings he never mentioned. And then there were the text messages. She found them one night after Ryan had fallen asleep, his phone buzzing on the nightstand. Claire's name lit up the screen, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Thinking about you. Can't wait until next time." Emily's heart shattered. She scrolled through the messages, her hands shaking. It wasn't just one text. It was dozens. Flirty, intimate, unmistakable. The next morning, Emily confronted him. "Are you cheating on me?" Ryan's face paled, but he quickly recovered. "What? No, where is this coming from?" "Don't lie to me, Ryan. I saw the texts I know about the hotel." Ryan's defenses crumbled. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Don't insult me," she snapped. "You're having an affair with Claire. Just admit it." He didn't deny it. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes said everything. Emily spent the next few days in a fog. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, barely spoke to the kids. Mia came over to check on her, but nothing seemed to help. "You need to talk to a lawyer," Mia urged. "Protect yourself." But Emily wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Ryan, meanwhile, was spiraling. He'd convinced himself he could fix things, but Claire wasn't making it easy. She wanted more. More time, more attention, more promises. "You said you weren't happy," Claire reminded him during one of their secret meetings. "I make you happy, don't I?" Ryan didn't answer. The truth was, he didn't know what made him happy anymore. Emily finally made her move after discovering something that changed everything. Buried in Ryan's desk drawer was a folder, a loan application for a second mortgage. She hadn't approved it, hadn't even known about it. When she dug deeper, she found out why Ryan had poured thousands into a new project, one that Claire had convinced him to take on. Emily saw it for what it was. Claire wasn't just after Ryan. She was after his business too. Determined to protect herself and her children, Emily started documenting everything. Emails, receipts, even recording conversations. She wasn't just going to confront Ryan. She was going to take him down. And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. The cracks in their marriage had turned into fault lines, and it was only a matter of time before the ground gave way completely. Emily was done playing the supportive wife. Now, she was ready to fight. And Ryan. He was about to learn what happens when you build your foundation on lies. Ryan's world was unraveling, and fast. The sterling name, once synonymous with success, was now teetering on the edge of scandal. Emily's discovery of the secret mortgage was just the beginning. She'd spent the last few weeks gathering evidence, bank statements, emails, and even texts, and what she found painted a disturbing picture. Claire wasn't just manipulating Ryan emotionally, she was pulling strings behind the scenes to set herself up as the new face of Sterling Properties. Emily wasn't going to let that happen. Late one night, while Ryan was at the office, Emily met with Mia in her living room. "This isn't just an affair," Emily said, spreading out the documents on the coffee table. "She's using him. She's got access to the company's financials. And look, these deposits." She pointed at a string of numbers. Money's disappearing into an account under her name. Mia's eyes widened. "Does Ryan know?" Maybe not." But he's so far gone, I doubt he even cares. So what's the plan? Emily stared at the papers. I'm taking this to his board. If I can prove Claire's been funneling money, I can cut her out, and maybe Ryan too. Mia hesitated. And what about the kids? Emily's voice hardened. They deserve better than this. The next day, Emily drove to Sterling Properties' downtown office. She'd barely stepped inside before Claire appeared, her heels clicking against the tile. Well, if it isn't Mrs. Sterling, Claire said, her smile razor-sharp. Emily's pulse quickened, but she stood her ground. We need to talk alone. Claire arched an eyebrow. About what? About how you've been stealing from my family. Claire's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. You really should be careful throwing around accusations like that. Emily leaned closer. I'm not accusing, I'm stating facts, and if you don't back off, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing. Claire's expression darkened. You don't scare me, Emily. You should be scared, because I'm not just here to save my marriage, I'm here to save everything you're trying to steal. Back at home, Ryan found Emily waiting for him. The house was quiet. The kids were staying at Mia's for the night, and the tension in the room was suffocating. We need to talk, Emily said, her voice steady. Ryan tossed his keys on the counter. Not tonight, Em. I'm exhausted. No, Ryan, now. Something in her tone stopped him. He turned, and when he saw the stack of papers on the table, his stomach dropped. What's this? Proof, Emily said, crossing her arms. Proof that Claire's been stealing from you and using you to cover it up. Ryan's face paled. That's ridiculous. Is it then explain these withdrawals? She shoved the papers toward him. Or the fake contracts she's been signing with your name, or the account she's been funneling money into while you've been too distracted to notice. Ryan stared at the documents, his hands trembling. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Emily's voice cracked. Because you were too busy falling for her lies. Ryan sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. I screwed up. You didn't just screw up, Ryan. You risked everything, our family, our future, for someone who's been playing you since day one. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she blinked them back. I've already contacted your board. They're reviewing the evidence. If you don't act first, they will. Ryan looked up at her, desperation in his eyes. What do you want me to do? Fire her, Emily said. Cut her out completely, and then, you fix this. Ryan nodded, but Emily wasn't convinced. Trust was broken, and it wasn't coming back anytime soon. Claire didn't go quietly. When Ryan confronted her at the office the next day, she laughed. You think you can just fire me? She said, crossing her arms. After everything I've done for this company? Everything you've done? Ryan shot back. You mean stealing from me, lying to me, using me? Claire's confidence wavered, but only for a moment. You can't prove any of it. Ryan tossed a folder onto the desk. Actually, I can, and so can the board. Pack your things, Claire. You're done. Her eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Ryan. No, Claire. My mistake was trusting you. Emily thought it was over, but Claire wasn't finished. That night, Emily's phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. You think you've won? Think again. Emily's blood ran cold. Claire wasn't going down without a fight, and Emily knew she needed to stay one step ahead. The tension between Ryan and Emily remained thick, but there was no time to deal with emotions. Claire's threats were real, and the fallout from the scandal was far from over. Ryan spent the next few days trying to patch things up at the office, but the damage was done. Investors were pulling out, clients were asking questions, and rumors were spreading. Emily, meanwhile, focused on protecting the kids. She met with lawyers, updated her will, and started looking at schools out of town, just in case. But it wasn't until Claire showed up at their house that things truly exploded. It was late, and Emily was alone. The knock at the door sent a chill down her spine. When she opened it, Claire stood there, her makeup smudged and her eyes wild. You ruined everything, Claire hissed. Emily stepped back, her heart racing. Get out. Claire pushed forward. You think this is over? I'm not finished. Emily grabbed her phone. "Leave now or I'm calling the police." Claire sneered but backed away. "This isn't over, Emily." Ryan came home to find Emily shaken but determined. "She came here," Emily said, pacing the living room. "Claire showed up at our door." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I'll take care of it." "No," Emily snapped. "You don't get to take care of it. You brought her into our lives. Now we're all paying the price." Ryan didn't argue. For the first time in weeks, he realized just how much damage he'd done, not just to Emily, but to their entire family. The final blow came 2 days later. Ryan's lawyer called with news. Claire had filed a lawsuit, claiming wrongful termination and harassment. Ryan slammed his fist on the desk. "She's bluffing." "She's not," the lawyer said. "She's playing dirty. And if we're not careful, this could drag on for months, or worse." Emily listened from the doorway, her face unreadable. "So what do we do?" Ryan asked. The lawyer hesitated. "We fight back, but it's going to get ugly." Emily stepped forward. "Then we make sure we win." The battle was far from over, but Emily wasn't backing down. She'd already lost too much, and she wasn't about to lose anything else. And Ryan. He was finally starting to realize that saving his family meant more than saving his business. The question was it too late? Ryan sat in his office, staring blankly at the lawsuit papers spread across his desk. His lawyer's words echoed in his head. It's going to get ugly. He knew Claire wouldn't go down without a fight, but this was war. Emily stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "So what's the plan?" Ryan rubbed his temples. "We fight back, I'll countersue for fraud. The evidence we have is strong enough to bury her." Emily stepped closer. "And what about us? Do you have a plan for that too?" Ryan looked up, guilt written all over his face. "Emily, I know I screwed up, but I'm trying to fix this." Emily didn't flinch. "Trying isn't enough, Ryan. Fixing this isn't just about Claire. It's about everything. The lies, the betrayal, the fact that you put her before your family." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I'm doing what I can." "Then do better," Emily shot back, turning and walking out. Ryan slumped back in his chair. He wanted to save his marriage, but deep down, he knew the damage might already be too much. The next few days were chaos. Claire's lawsuit hit the news, and suddenly, Sterling Properties was all anyone could talk about. Investors panicked, and clients started pulling out of deals. Ryan tried to keep it together, but the cracks were showing. Meanwhile, Emily was building her own case. She hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Claire's background, and what they found changed everything. Claire wasn't just after Ryan. She'd done this before. 2 years earlier, she'd worked for another real estate firm in a neighboring city. She'd gotten close to the CEO, had an affair, and then sabotaged the company from the inside. By the time they caught her, she'd already disappeared with thousands in stolen funds. Emily wasted no time presenting the evidence to Ryan's lawyer. "This proves she's a con artist," Emily said. "We need to use this." The lawyer nodded. "It's exactly what we need to discredit her claims." But Claire wasn't going down without a fight. 2 nights later, Emily was home alone when she heard a noise outside. At first, she brushed it off, probably just the wind, but then the noise came again, louder this time. She grabbed her phone and crept toward the front door. Through the peephole, she saw a shadowy figure standing on the porch. Her heart raced as she dialed Ryan. "Someone's outside," she whispered. "Call the police," Ryan said immediately. "I'm on my way." Before Emily could react, the figure banged on the door. "Emily, open up!" Claire's voice rang out. Emily froze. "Open the door, Emily! I know you're in there!" Emily stepped back, her hands shaking. "Get out of here, Claire, or I'm calling the police." Claire laughed, but it was cold, unhinged. "Go ahead, call them. I have nothing to lose." The pounding continued until sirens blared in the distance. Claire took off before the police arrived, but the damage was done. When Ryan showed up, Emily was shaken, but determined. "She's desperate," Emily said, "and that makes her dangerous." Ryan nodded. "We'll get a restraining order first thing in the morning." But deep down they both knew this wasn't over. The next day, Ryan confronted Claire one last time. He found her at a coffee shop, sitting alone and looking more disheveled than ever. "Claire," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. She smirked. "Come to gloat?" "No," Ryan said firmly. "I came to warn you, drop the lawsuit and walk away, or this ends badly for you." Claire leaned back, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can scare me?" Ryan slid a folder across the table. "I don't need to scare you. I just need to expose you." Claire opened the folder, her face paling as she flipped through the documents, evidence of her past schemes, bank records, and testimonies from her previous victims. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice wavered. "Try me," Ryan replied. Claire's confidence shattered. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, but Ryan knew she wasn't gone for good. That night, Emily packed a bag for the kids. "Where are we going?" Ella asked. "To stay with Aunt Mia for a few days," Emily said, trying to keep her voice calm. "But why?" Jake pressed. "Just for fun," Emily lied. Ryan watched as Emily loaded the kids into the car. "You're leaving?" "Just until this blows over," Emily said. "I can't take any more surprises." Ryan wanted to stop her, but he knew better. For now, protecting the kids was more important than fixing what was broken between them. The final blow came the next morning. Ryan's lawyer called with news. Claire had disappeared. "She cleaned out her accounts and skipped town," the lawyer said. "The lawsuit's dead in the water." Relief washed over Ryan, but it didn't last. "She's gone, but this isn't over," Emily warned. "She'll do this to someone else." Ryan nodded. "Not if I can help it." Over the next few weeks, Ryan and Emily worked to repair the damage Claire had left behind. Ryan rebuilt trust with his clients, while Emily focused on rebuilding trust with their kids. But their marriage, that was still a work in progress. One evening, Ryan found Emily in the kitchen, staring at an old photo of their family. "Do you think we can fix this?" he asked quietly. Emily didn't answer right away. "I don't know, but I think we can try." Ryan reached for her hand. "I'll do whatever it takes." Emily squeezed his hand but pulled away. "We'll see." Emily's car crawled down the rain-slicked street, headlights cutting through the fog. The kids were asleep in the back seat, their bags stuffed into the trunk. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Ryan had begged her to stay, but Emily knew better. Claire was unhinged, and despite disappearing, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was still watching, waiting. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down and saw Mia's name. "Hey, we just pulled in. Can you open the gate?" Mia's voice sounded off. "Emily, there's something you need to see." Emily's stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Just get inside, I'll explain." Back at the house, Ryan sat in his office, surrounded by financial statements and legal papers. He thought he'd feel relieved now that Claire was gone, but instead, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. He kept replaying the last few weeks in his head. The lies, the fights, the moment Emily walked out. Every decision he'd made had led him here, and now he was left trying to fix something that might be beyond repair. His phone rang. It was Emily. "Ryan," her voice was sharp. "Claire's back." Ryan froze. "What? How do you know?" "She was at Mia's. She left a note." "What did it say?" Emily hesitated. "That she's not finished with us." Ryan stood, his pulse quickening. "I'm coming over." "No," Emily snapped. "Stay there. Keep the house locked. I'll call the police." An hour later, Emily was pacing the living room of Mia's house. A police officer stood nearby, jotting down notes as Emily recounted everything. Claire's threats, the break-ins, the lawsuit. "So she's dangerous?" Emily asked. The officer nodded. "Given her history, yes. We'll keep a patrol car outside tonight, but I'd suggest avoiding your house until we have her in custody." Emily exhaled, but the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. Meanwhile, Ryan wasn't listening. Against Emily's wishes, he went back to their house. He couldn't sit back and wait. He had to face Claire and end this once and for all. The house was dark when he arrived, but something felt off. The front door was locked, but when he stepped inside, he saw muddy footprints trailing across the hardwood floors. "Claire?" Ryan called out, his voice echoing. No response. He moved slowly, checking each room, but the house was empty. Or so he thought. When he reached his office, he stopped cold. The safe was open, files were scattered everywhere, and in the middle of the mess, was Claire, sitting in his chair, holding a stack of papers. "You shouldn't be here," Ryan said, his voice low. Claire looked up, her eyes wild. "Neither should you." Ryan stepped closer. "This is over, Claire. The police are looking for you. Just leave before you make it worse." Claire laughed, but it was hollow. "Worse? You think I care about worse? I lost everything because of you." "No," Ryan shot back. "You lost everything because you lied and cheated your way into my life." Claire stood, slamming the papers onto the desk. "And you let me." Ryan's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You need to leave." Claire stepped closer. "Or what you'll call the cops. Go ahead, do it." Ryan pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, Claire lunged. She slapped the phone out of his hand and shoved him back. "You don't get to end this," she screamed. Ryan grabbed her wrists, pushing her away. "Get out!" Claire stumbled, but caught herself. Her eyes darted to the open safe. "You think I'm walking away with nothing after everything I've done for you?" She grabbed a USB drive from the desk. "That's mine," Ryan said. "Not anymore." Claire bolted toward the door, but Ryan caught her arm. "Give it back, Claire." "Make me," she hissed, twisting free. Before Ryan could stop her, Claire ran out the door and disappeared into the night. By the time Emily and the police arrived, Claire was gone. "She took the drive," Ryan said, pacing the living room. "It has client data, financial records, everything." Emily rubbed her temples. "How could you let this happen?" "I was trying to end it." "And now she has leverage," Emily snapped. "If she leaks those files, we're finished." Ryan turned to the officer. "You need to find her now." "We will," the officer promised. "But if she's desperate, this could get messy." The next 24 hours were a blur. Ryan locked down the company's systems, but it was too late. Clients were already calling, asking about rumors of leaked data. Investors threatened to back out. Emily tried to focus on the kids, but she couldn't stop checking the news, waiting for the next bombshell. And Claire. She stayed one step ahead, taunting them with anonymous emails and cryptic messages. "You're not safe. This isn't over." The messages pushed Emily to her breaking point. "We have to stop her," she said, pacing Mia's kitchen. "She's not going to stop until she destroys us." Mia leaned back. "Then you need to make her think she's already won." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" Mia smiled. "We bait her, make her come to us." The plan was risky, but they didn't have a choice. Emily leaked a fake press release announcing that Sterling Properties was declaring bankruptcy. The bait worked. The next night, Claire showed up at the office, hoping to steal whatever she could before it was too late. But this time, Emily and Ryan were ready. Claire broke in, only to find the police waiting for her. "It's over, Claire," Emily said, as the officers cuffed her. Claire struggled, her eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret this." Emily didn't flinch. "No, Claire, you will." With Claire finally behind bars, the nightmare was over. Or so they thought. Emily returned home with the kids, but the damage lingered. The trust between her and Ryan was shattered, and no matter how hard he tried, Emily couldn't forget what he'd done. "I need time," she told him. Ryan nodded. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Emily sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. The kids were asleep upstairs, but Emily couldn't rest. She kept replaying Claire's arrest in her head. The screaming, the threats, the look in her eyes that said this wasn't over. Ryan was upstairs too, but in the guest room they hadn't shared a bed in weeks, and though he'd tried to bridge the gap, Emily wasn't ready. Not yet. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was Mia. "Hey," Emily answered quietly. "Turn on the news," Mia said, her voice tense. Emily grabbed the remote and flipped through the channels until she saw it, Claire's mugshot plastered across the screen. Breaking news. Former Sterling Properties executive Claire Donovan faces multiple charges, including fraud, theft, and corporate espionage. But the shocking twist, investigators say she's been operating under a false identity for years. Emily's heart skipped. "She's not who we thought she was," Mia said. "Her real name's Cassandra Marks. She's wanted in 3 other states." Emily's mind raced. "So she's done this before?" "More than once." Emily sat down, her legs suddenly shaky. "This isn't over, is it?" "No," Mia said. "And you need to be ready." The next morning, Emily met with Ryan at the office. The tension between them hung in the air, but right now, their focus was on survival. "We need to get ahead of this," Emily said, sliding a folder across the desk. "The investors are panicking. If we don't reassure them, we're done." Ryan nodded, but his eyes were distant. "What if it's too late? The damage is already done." Emily's voice hardened. "Then we rebuild. We didn't come this far to lose everything now." Ryan looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he saw the woman he fell in love with, the fighter, the survivor. "You're right," he said. "We fix this." But fixing it wouldn't be easy. Later that day, Emily got a call from Detective Hughes, the officer in charge of Claire's case. "We found something," Hughes said, "and you're going to want to see it." Emily drove straight to the station, her nerves on edge. Hughes led her into an evidence room, where a table was covered with files, photos, and USB drives. "This is everything we recovered from Claire's apartment," Hughes said. "Or should I say Cassandra's?" Emily's eyes scanned the table. "What am I looking at?" Hughes pointed to a stack of notebooks. "Plans. Detailed plans for targeting Sterling Properties. And your family." Emily's stomach turned. "My family?" "She wasn't just after the business, she wanted your life." Emily flipped through the notebooks, each page more disturbing than the last. There were sketches of their house, notes about the kids' schedules, even receipts for gifts Claire had bought to win over Ryan. "She planned this for months," Hughes said. "Maybe longer." Emily's hands trembled. "What happens now?" Hughes sighed. "We build the case. But Emily, people like Claire don't give up easily." That night, Emily locked every door and window, double-checking the alarms before heading upstairs. She found Ryan sitting on the edge of the bed in the guest room, staring at his phone. "More bad news?" Emily asked. Ryan shook his head. "Just thinking." Emily leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" Ryan looked up, his eyes heavy with regret. "About how close I came to losing everything." Emily didn't respond. Instead, she sat down beside him. "You hurt me, Ryan," she said softly. "You broke my trust." "I know," he whispered, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back." Emily looked at him for a long moment before taking his hand. "We'll see." The next day, Emily and Ryan presented their recovery plan. To the investors, Emily took the lead, outlining the steps they'd already taken to secure the company's assets and prevent another breach. The room was tense, but by the end of the meeting, the investors agreed to give them another chance. As they left the boardroom, Ryan turned to Emily. "You were incredible in there." Emily smiled for the first time in weeks. "We're not out of the woods yet." "Not yet," Ryan said, "but we're getting there." But Claire, or Cassandra, wasn't finished. From her holding cell, she managed to send one final message. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." Emily read the text and felt a chill run down her spine. She knew Claire's trial would take months, maybe longer, and the possibility of her getting out on bail was too real. Ryan saw the look on Emily's face. "What is it?" Emily showed him the message. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Let her come. This time, we'll be ready." For the first time in months, Emily felt hope. The battle wasn't over, but she wasn't fighting alone anymore. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone take away what she'd built. Emily stared at the text message glowing on her phone screen. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." Her hands trembled as she reread the words, the cold finality of the threat twisting in her gut. She looked up at Ryan, his expression hardening, as he took the phone from her. "She's in jail," he said, pacing the living room. "How the hell did she even send this?" Emily swallowed, her voice shaking. "Someone's helping her." Ryan stopped mid-step. "What do you mean?" "She planned everything. Claire, Cassandra, whatever her name is, didn't act alone. Someone's still out there, pulling strings for her." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then we find out who." The next morning, Emily met Detective Hughes at the station. "We traced the message," Hughes said, sliding a file across the table. It came from a burner phone registered under a fake ID. Emily's stomach sank. So she has an accomplice. Hughes nodded. We think so, and we found this during a sweep of her jail cell. He held up a folded note. Emily took it carefully, her eyes scanning the scrawled handwriting. Wait for my signal. We'll finish this. Emily's heart raced. What does this mean? It means she's not done, Hughes said grimly, and she's not alone. Back at the office, Ryan was already taking precautions. He hired extra security for the building and put surveillance on their house. But it didn't stop the panic clawing at his chest. Emily found him later, sitting at his desk, staring at an old family photo. The four of them at the beach, before everything fell apart. This wasn't supposed to happen, he said quietly. Emily sat down across from him. I know. I almost lost everything. He looked up at her, guilt etched into his face. Including you. Emily reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. We're not done fighting. Ryan's eyes hardened. Then let's finish this. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak and groan of the house making her heart race. Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it quickly, half expecting another message from Claire. But this time, it was an email. I see you. Attached was a photo, Emily standing outside the police station earlier that day. Her breath caught, and she jumped out of bed, running down the hall to Ryan's room. Ryan! He was awake instantly, his eyes widening when he saw her panic. What happened? She handed him the phone. She's watching us. Ryan shot out of bed, grabbing his own phone to call Detective Hughes. We need patrol cars outside now, he barked. Emily stood by the window, staring out into the darkness. She couldn't see anything, but she knew someone was out there. Watching, waiting. The next morning, Emily decided enough was enough. She drove back to the station and demanded to see Claire. You can't, Hughes said. Her lawyer shut down visitation after yesterday's incident. I don't care, Emily snapped. I need answers. Hughes sighed, but eventually agreed to let Emily observe through the glass as they questioned Claire again. Claire sat at the table, looking calm. Too calm. She smirked when she saw Emily watching. She's playing games, Hughes said, but we're close to finding out who's helping her. Emily didn't feel reassured. Claire's confidence wasn't the kind that came from desperation. It was the kind that came from knowing something no one else did. Back at home, Emily and Ryan tried to keep things normal for the kids. They played board games, cooked dinner, and even managed to laugh once or twice. But the tension lingered, like a storm waiting to break. That night, after the kids were asleep, Emily and Ryan sat in the living room, going over security footage from the house. There, Ryan said, pointing at the screen. A shadow moved near the fence line, just for a second, but it was enough. Emily's pulse quickened. Is that... Ryan rewound the footage and zoomed in. It wasn't Claire. It was a man. Who is he? Emily whispered. Ryan's face darkened. I don't know, but we're going to find out. The next day, Ryan met with Hughes while Emily stayed home with the kids. The detective had run the footage through their database. His name's Eric Benson, Hughes said. Former private investigator. And guess what? Ryan's stomach sank. What? He worked for Claire before she came here. Ryan's fists clenched. Where is he now? Hughes shrugged. Off the grid, but we'll find him. Emily was cleaning up after lunch when the doorbell rang. She froze. The security system hadn't gone off, which meant whoever was outside wasn't supposed to be there. She grabbed the baseball bat Ryan kept by the door and peeked through the peephole. No one was there. But when she opened the door, a single envelope sat on the welcome mat. Her hands shook as she picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single photo, her and the kids at the park the day before. Emily slammed the door shut, locking it behind her. When Ryan came home, he found Emily pacing the living room, the photo clenched in her hand. They know where we are, she said, her voice trembling. Ryan took the photo and stared at it. We need to leave. Emily shook her head. No, I'm done running. Ryan looked at her, surprised by the steel in her voice. "This ends now," Emily said. "We set a trap." That night, Emily and Ryan put their plan in motion. They staged a meeting at the office, something Claire's accomplice wouldn't be able to resist. Hughes and his team set up surveillance, ready to move in the moment anyone made contact. Hours passed, the tension mounting, and then, just after midnight, the motion detectors in the building went off. Emily's heart raced as she watched the monitors. A figure slipped inside, moving cautiously through the shadows. "It's him," Hughes said, signaling his team. Within minutes, Eric Benson was in cuffs, but the look on his face sent chills down Emily's spine. "This doesn't end with me," he said as they dragged him out. "She'll find a way." The following morning, Claire's lawyer announced that she was taking a plea deal with Eric's arrest. Her case had crumbled, and she had no choice but to cooperate. But Emily knew better. Claire might be locked away, but the damage she caused left scars that wouldn't heal overnight. Emily stood on the porch that evening, watching the sunset as Ryan joined her. "It's over," he said. Emily didn't look at him. "Is it?" Ryan reached for her hand. "It has to be." Emily squeezed his hand, but deep down, she wasn't so sure. Emily stood at the edge of the driveway, the cool night air biting at her skin. The street was quiet, too quiet, and the faint hum of the security cameras was the only sound breaking the silence. Ryan was inside, pacing the living room, but Emily needed air. She needed to clear her head before facing whatever came next. The plan had worked. Eric Benson was in custody, and Claire had finally folded under the pressure. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Claire's words haunted her. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." The phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't recognize the number. Her stomach clenched as she answered. "Hello?" A distorted voice came through the speaker. "Did you think locking me up would stop me?" Emily's blood ran cold. "Claire." The line went dead. She turned and sprinted back inside, locking the door behind her. Ryan looked up, his face hardening the moment he saw her expression. "What happened?" "She called," Emily said, her voice shaking. "How's she supposed to be in jail?" Ryan grabbed his phone and dialed Detective Hughes. "She's still behind bars," Hughes said when he picked up. "I just checked the logs." "Then how the hell did she call Emily?" "There's only one explanation," Hughes said grimly. "She still has people on the outside." The next morning, Emily and Ryan met with Hughes at the police station. "We combed through Benson's phone," Hughes said, pulling up a file on his computer. "There's another number, one that's been in frequent contact with Claire's burner phone." "Who is it?" Ryan demanded. Hughes hesitated. "You're not going to like it." Emily leaned forward. "Just tell us." Hughes turned the screen. A photo popped up. Mia. Emily's breath caught. "No, that's impossible." Ryan stood abruptly. "Mia, are you kidding me?" Hughes raised a hand. "It's not definitive yet, but we need to question her." Emily shook her head. "She's my best friend. She wouldn't—" "Emily," Hughes said gently, "sometimes betrayal comes from the people we least expect." Emily drove straight to Mia's house, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Ryan wanted to come, but she'd told him to stay back. If this was some kind of misunderstanding, she needed to handle it alone. But deep down, she wasn't sure it was a misunderstanding at all. Mia opened the door, her eyes widening. "Emily, what's wrong?" Emily held up her phone. "You tell me." Mia's face fell. "I can explain." "Explain?" Emily's voice cracked. "You've been working with Claire after everything she did to me, to my family?" "It's not what you think." Mia stepped closer, but Emily backed away. "Then what is it?" Mia's voice broke. "She blackmailed me." Emily froze. "What?" "She found out about something, a mistake I made years ago. She threatened to expose it unless I helped her." Emily's chest tightened. "What did you do?" Mia looked away. "I embezzled money from my old job. It was years ago and I paid it back, but Claire found out and said she'd go public if I didn't cooperate." Tears streamed down Mia's face, but Emily's anger burned hotter. "So you sold me out?" Emily snapped. "I didn't want to," Mia cried. "I tried to stop her, but she's dangerous, Emily. I was scared." Emily's voice dropped. "You should have come to me," Mia sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Emily stared at her, the betrayal cutting deeper than she thought possible. She turned and walked away. That night, Emily sat in the dark, staring at the phone. Ryan found her there, his face tight with concern. "What did she say?" "She was scared," Emily said flatly, "but she still betrayed us." Ryan sat beside her. "What now?" Emily clenched her fists. "We end this for good." The next day, Hughes called with news. "We've traced the calls. They came from Mia's burner phone, but Claire was the one orchestrating it. We have enough evidence to add conspiracy charges." Emily felt a flicker of relief, but it didn't last. "She's not going to stop," Emily said. Hughes nodded. "We'll make sure she does." That evening, Emily and Ryan packed up the kids and drove to a hotel. They weren't taking any more chances, but Claire wasn't done playing games. Emily's phone buzzed again, this time a photo of the hotel parking lot. She showed it to Ryan, her hands shaking. "She knows where we are." Ryan didn't hesitate. "We're leaving now." But as they stepped outside, headlights flashed in their faces. Emily shielded her eyes. "Who is that?" The car sped toward them, screeching to a stop just feet away. It wasn't Claire. It was Mia. Emily froze as Mia jumped out of the car, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Get in!" Mia shouted. "She's coming!" Ryan pulled Emily back. "We can't trust her." Mia shook her head frantically. "She sent someone after me. She thinks I turned on her." Emily hesitated, but the panic in Mia's eyes was real. Ryan grabbed Emily's arm. "We're leaving now." They piled into the car, speeding away as another set of headlights appeared in the distance. Emily's pulse raced. "Is that her?" Mia glanced in the mirror. "I don't know, but we can't stop." The chase lasted for miles, twisting through back roads and empty highways. Finally, they pulled into a police station, skidding to a stop in front of the entrance. Officers swarmed the parking lot, guns drawn as the car behind them slowed and stopped. Eric Benson stepped out. Emily's stomach dropped. "I thought he was in jail." "He was released on bail this morning," Hughes said, stepping out of the station. Eric smirked, but it didn't last. Officers swarmed him, pinning him to the ground. "You're done," Hughes said. Eric didn't resist. "You think so?" Hughes nodded toward Emily. "We know everything, and this time, you're not getting out." Inside, Emily finally let herself breathe. The nightmare wasn't over, but they'd won the first battle. Ryan took her hand. "You were amazing." Emily squeezed his hand. "We still have work to do." Ryan nodded. Together. The flashing red and blue lights finally dimmed as the last patrol car pulled out of the parking lot. Emily stood in the lobby of the police station, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The weight of everything, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, was finally sinking in. Ryan stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't trying to fix things with words. He just stood there, steady and silent, letting her breathe. Detective Hughes approached, a tired but reassuring smile on his face. "It's over," he said. "Eric's in custody, and with Claire's plea deal, we have enough evidence to make sure neither of them sees daylight anytime soon." Emily exhaled, the knot in her stomach loosening just a little. "What about Mia?" Hughes shifted uncomfortably. "She's cooperating. Given the circumstances, the DA's willing to cut her a deal, probation and community service, but she'll never work in finance again." Emily nodded, the news landing heavily. "I don't know if I can forgive her." Hughes met her eyes. "You don't have to, but at least now you can move on." The days that followed were a blur of depositions, statements, and meetings with lawyers. Claire and Eric's schemes unraveled quickly, exposing layers of fraud and manipulation that stretched far beyond Sterling Properties. But the damage to Emily and Ryan's lives lingered. At home, Emily struggled to find a new normal. The kids were quieter, clinging to her in ways they hadn't before. And Ryan, he was trying, but trust didn't rebuild overnight. One afternoon, Emily found Ryan in the backyard, repairing the fence Claire's accomplice had broken during the break-in. You don't have to fix everything, she said, stepping outside. Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead and turned to her. I know, but I need to try. Emily crossed her arms. What happens when the next storm hits? Are we just going to patch things up again? Ryan set down his tools and walked over to her. No, we rebuild from the ground up. Emily's eyes softened, but she didn't answer right away. I'll wait as long as it takes, Ryan said quietly. Emily looked at him for a long moment, before finally reaching for his hand. Then let's start now. Months passed. Claire was sentenced to 15 years in prison. With no chance of parole for at least a decade, Eric received 10 years for his role in the scheme. Mia, after completing her probation and community service, moved to another state to start over. She sent Emily one last letter, an apology Emily never opened. Sterling Properties survived the scandal, but not without scars. Investors returned cautiously, and Ryan made sure to rebuild the company with tighter controls and greater transparency. Emily took on a more active role in the business, ensuring no one would ever take advantage of their trust again. One evening, Emily and Ryan sat on the porch, watching the kids play in the yard. They're laughing again, Emily said, smiling. Ryan nodded. So are you. Emily leaned back, her gaze softening. I didn't think we'd get here. Neither did I, Ryan admitted. But we did. Emily looked at him, her hand finding his. We're stronger now. Ryan squeezed her hand. Because we fought for it. The final piece of closure came weeks later. Emily received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo, her and Ryan at their wedding, smiling and carefree. On the back, a note was scrawled in familiar handwriting. You'll never see me again, but don't ever forget how close I came. Emily's stomach tightened, but then she smiled. She grabbed a lighter, stepped outside, and watched the photo burn. Some scars never fade completely, but Emily wasn't afraid of them anymore. And that's how the story ends. Messy, raw, but real. Emily and Ryan's marriage wasn't perfect, but it was stronger. They didn't just survive the storm, they rebuilt, brick by brick. As for Claire, she lost. And this time, there was no coming back. Let this be a lesson. Betrayal may shake your foundation, but it doesn't have to destroy it. Thanks for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales like this one. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. See you in the next video.